With the training side of things, because I know the listeners will be curious as well. During your time of competition, how did you like to arrange your training? Like, would you go in and just hit one body part a day? Or did you like to combine things? Did you do full body? What did you enjoy the most?
Well, that part was kind of traditional. For the most part, I did chest, shoulder, triceps, back, rhomboid, rear delts, and biceps the same day, and then legs on the third day. For the most part,
Mm.
that's what I stuck with. And one thing I learned is that progression and reaching your goal and actually building the body, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So all the years that I trained, as long as it was working, I never changed it, because so many people, they have struggles even getting the smallest amount of progress. And because I was progressing, there was no need to change it.
And when you talk about looking at progression, was it like getting stronger over time? Like you're like, wow, okay, I'm doing more reps with this weight that I once couldn't. Or were those forms of progression that you paid attention to?
Yeah, some people look at their soreness as progression, but soreness is just soreness. Progression is progression. Can you lift more? Is your form consistent? Are you more flexible? Is the muscle growing? So I judge progression by progression, not how the muscle feels. In any given day, you could feel different. Man, I am so tired today. I don't feel quite as strong. That doesn't matter to me, but progression is progression. And some people say, "Oh, I lost I've gained a few pounds. That must be muscle." Well, I judge that by if my waist is getting smaller, but my arms, legs, and back is getting bigger, then that's most likely growth. But if my waist is getting bigger and my strength is the same, I'm probably putting on a little body fat.
Right. Which a lot of guys, they fall into that trap when their goal is muscle growth. So it is interesting to hear your perspective on things, someone who's been doing it for a very long time. Where are you at now with it? Like, are you training like you once did, but just of course you're not competing, but do you train like how you did when you were, or do you kind of do things a little differently now that you're 62 and your goals have shifted?
I'm much more of a stickler when it comes to form because I can't afford to get hurt. I don't do squats anymore. I do leg press. I used to squat for competition. I used to bench press for competition and deadlift for competition, but that was really my foundation. But I don't do those movements, deadlifts, anymore. They're not necessary for me. And I don't squat anymore because one bad repetition could be the end of you. So it's not worth that for me. But I do heavy leg press. One is I was also a sprinter. I
Hmm.
was a sprinter from probably sixth grade. That's where my leg development came from. So sprinting is an activity that actually builds muscle, glutes, quads, hamstrings. And so I did a lot of sprinting. Sprinting also releases natural growth hormone. The three exercises that are best for releasing natural growth hormone is squats first. Heavy squats releases your own natural growth hormone. Sprinting and deadlifts. I wouldn't recommend just everybody go out and sprint because you could easily pull a hamstring or hurt yourself. But at the time, I'm these huge legs, extremely flexible because I stretched all the time. I would do a sprinting workout for my leg workout. I would do 40s, 60s, 100s, and 200-meter sprints. And I would go as high as 400-meter sprints when I was getting prepared for competition because that builds more definition. And with that being said, you're working two different energy systems. If you look at a sprinter, they have well-developed legs. It's the difference between sprinting and running a marathon. The body adapts and adjusts to the activity. If you're sprinting, the body says, I've got to get more powerful. I've got to get stronger. I've got to build more dense bones. And that's what happens. And if you're doing marathons, it's saying this extra muscle is too much for me. So I've got to get rid of some of this muscle and I've got to build stores. And it starts to utilize fat for energy after 15 minutes of consistent running. So I would use the energy systems to encompass my training. Swimming, the same thing. I would do butterfly. Butterfly builds a tremendous back. I would do 40 meters. I would do 100-meter butterfly. I swam the IM, which is the individual medley, where you swim all four strokes. And this little short bodybuilder swimming the IM, it doesn't seem like a thing that's possible. My body's so heavy, it sinks. But I didn't realize that my body was sinking when everybody else was buoyant. I just knew that I had to get from point A to point C. And point B was the journey. I implemented all of the sports that I ever participated in my training for competition. competition. I did a lot of cross training. I didn't like being forced into a small space to work out. I didn't like that. When the weather changed and it was warm outside, I spent as much time outside as I could. I did the training in the gym. I focused, with all of the movements. I did work out in the gym, but I did a lot of cross training when it was feasible. The way I gauged my competing was very different. Like most people, they change and they decrease their calories as they get closer and closer to the competition. I would use my training and my eating together, where by the time I competed, I ate so much that my jaws would hurt.
Oh.
I never did the dehydration thing. In the very beginning, when I was 18, I did. But when you dehydrate the body, you actually age the body.
Mm.
So I never did the 2 days before competition, just start slowly getting rid of the water until you're completely dry. Well, when you see the guys on stage and they're doing this, that's called a misfire, where they don't have the minerals. The body is electrically conducted. And if you don't have the minerals, then that's where you start to get the misfire and you see the shaking oftentimes. So what I would do is 3 weeks prior to the competition, instead of drinking a gallon of water, I drank 2 gallons of water. Every single day, I would get up at night and use the bathroom. And as fluid was going out, fluid was going in. I got it up to 2 gallons of water. And then the 2 days prior to the competition, I would drink tea and coffee to help flush the water out. And I would drink a gallon of water. So with that, I still had a gallon of water in my system. But what actually took place was I flushed the water from between the skin and the muscle. And because of my training, for every ounce of glycogen, it requires 3 ounces of glycogen-bound water. So the more glycogen I could store in the muscle, the more water that muscle would hold. And so that made the muscle fuller. And so my goal was not to dehydrate and lose weight, but my goal, and I would start this a year, I would start competition preparation instead of 3 months, 2 months, I would start a year in advance, and at the most 2 years. And I would train and I would focus and I would visualize and I would see myself winning 2 years in advance.
So when we're talking about like a traditional off season, we'll call it like a period where you've increased the calories because your goal is to put on muscle versus getting ready for a competition to strip all the fat away. Did you have periods like that where you would maybe take like, let's take 6 months, we're going to increase the calories, we're going to try to put on it, this typical quote unquote bulking that a lot of bodybuilders do, right? Or did in the past. Did you do that yourself or no?
Never. I never had a bulking phase. I was
Okay.
always relatively cut year round. I carried a little more body fat because intentionally I would slow my metabolism down intentionally, because by the time I competed, my body fat had gotten so low that it was unhealthy. When I would get in the water, and even in the middle of the summer, my body would get cold and it would be hard for me to warm up. I mean, it was dangerous. My immune system, the fat is also a part of your immune system. And so my immune system was being challenged when I competed because my body was, for those couple of days, my body was in an unhealthy state.
Was that all the way up to your final competition? You were approaching it like the way you're saying now?
Basically, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
to some degree. It's really different and unorthodox. Like there was a time when I was supposed to travel, I think it was to Australia this time to compete. And probably a week prior, I was ministering at a church. And the Lord said, I want you to go on a 3-day fast. I'm like, I've been preparing for a whole year for this competition. I've got every single day set up. I want to do this thing. And you're saying a 3-day fast because I'm going to minister at this church? God, what are you doing? So I obey. I do the 3-day fast. And I'm afraid, man, and I'm trying to be really humble. So the night before the competition, I'm praying, and I try to say, I try to be really, really humble in my prayer, and I say, it's a false humility, actually. I said, Lord, even if I don't, couldn't say if I don't win, couldn't say it. I'm gonna win. I've been training, I've been visualizing. This is my time. I couldn't say even if I don't win, I'm still gonna continue walking with you. I was gonna do that anyway, but man, I woke up the next morning. This is when I was with Jim Evans. I was competing in his Mr. Universe competition. I woke up against a guy named Wayne Hammond. He had won the universe, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row. Nobody could beat him. I woke up that morning, man, I looked in the mirror and I just started crying. What I saw in the mirror, I'd never seen anything like this before in my life. And it was out of my obedience to God. I seen this transformation, and I heard a voice say to me that the Bible said that he created man from the dust of the earth, and all he had to do is reform the dust. And that's what he did. In my obedience and ministering to this church, he reformed my dust, man. And when I looked in the mirror, I was like, what is that? What is that? And I was so afraid that I would put my clothes on and take them off and it wouldn't look the same as what I saw in the mirror. But lo and behold, man, I got on that stage and it was like, those are some of the best times that I can remember. Some of the best times that I can remember. They would call me Mr. Universe. I would thank God. I said, God, thank you for allowing me to carry this title, Mr. Universe. But I know who the real Mr. Universe is, and it's not me.
Mm.
It's not me. And so, those were some of the best times that I can remember, man. So again, thank you for bringing up some of those things. It's encouraging me, man. It makes me want to compete again. I think part of my training came with a gift. One of the things is I used to work with Nautilus. When they first started, they were out of Ohio. Arthur was the father's name, and then his son took over. I got certified by Nautilus to teach how to use their equipment when I worked for the military. I went down there, got a chance to use their equipment and talk to him a little bit. But when he retired, his son took over.